I was having these experiences which were at the time were very sort of, they were unknown. You know, it was quite scary, to be honest, because it challenges the whole foundations of who you think you are, especially when it comes to the ego the ego construct that you have of yourself. Like, I'm down to have a podcast and stuff like that, and or whatever relationships you've got, and or your living environments and things like that, or how you've treated people in the past. It brings all this to the surface, and it hyper focuses and hyper analyzes every single element of your life that you need to work on and become a better person.
So yeah, here we go.
Let's do it. Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. What a perfect location to talk some fucking truth.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually thinking that when you first invited us down to do the podcast, and you taught us how we were going to be doing it in sort of a location that's near the coast. It's really interesting because in the past, when I've had conversations in person, or even when you have a conversation with your friends, and you come to a location like this, it does something to your mind. It does something to your senses in your body, where you actually sort of, you know, it's hard to explain, but I think it activates certain parts in you that maybe like primal aspects that we don't no longer serve anymore inside ourselves.
Absolutely, and it's kind of unexplainable as well. The exact thing I'm thinking of when you say that is when I'm walking down the beach, because I live literally, 100 meters from the beach, and I come down and I notice the difference in probably the same person that I'd meet on the beach. If I met that person on the metro, they'd be a completely different person. But the person they are on the beach, when they're just like looking out, walking their dog, and they're just like, wow, and they're feeling really good. And if they feel good, and when you feel good, you kind of, you are good in a way.
Yeah, definitely. I had an example as well a while ago where I went to the Lake District, and there's like sort of, I had this scenario where I had to, so when I do these long hikes and stuff, for example, it's good to take a bag with your water on and stuff like that, because if you don't take your water, you sort of, and you're hiking miles away, you get dehydrated very fast, don't you? And I had this example where I had to nip back into the town centre, and I went in the town centre and I was walking around all the people, and I was analysing people, and people's heads were down, they weren't looking at you, they weren't speaking, no communication, like in the bubbles, running around fast as they could. And then I went to the start of the hike, and more people were the bodies were more relaxed, they were in a state of where they could actually smile at you and look at you. And then as I got further and further up the top of the mountain, people were asking you, do you need a drink? Are you okay? Have you got enough stuff on you? So it's like you can use that metaphor for life. If you're somebody who is, more doing your practices, you're in a state of where you're not rushing around, you're not too much reliant upon all these different systems that are pulling us in our lives, and you can be in a state of, flow more in your life. It gives you that perspective in your mind where you can be a nicer person. Because I think at times in the modern day world now, this is what I'm noticing, is that when you are in that state of flux all the time, where you're constantly, you're worrying about where to get your paycheck from, you're not in a state of where you can have a couple of seconds to pause in your life. You really, from that position, the modern day world can turn you into a person that's not a very nice person, and that's what I feel anyway.
Too much information, information rich and experience poor. The one thing I'd say is about the tube. The tube's not inherently bad in London, but I always say I hate the person that I am on the tube, because it does. Your environment shapes almost your environment is so important in our nurture, in our growing up as kids, and it just plays such a big part in kind of our, I guess, our outlook and how we interact with it. It's so fundamental.
Yeah, I think as well. So just to jump in, I was going to say, I think there's like a primal dynamic that within society at the moment, because, for example, say if you're on the way here, you're driving in the car. I know there's a subconscious process now after you're driving a car for a long time where you get used to the mechanisms, and you're just on autopilot driving down the road. But there's something that does happen. There's this sort of senses in our bodies that are being heightened by the modern day world. For example, if take for example, you're driving to London, and you're constantly on that fight and flight response all the time, where your senses are just they're heightened all the time. And for me, if you really do tune into that, you start understanding that there is things that we're doing in the modern day world that aren't quite, they aren't quite fully, what's the word I'm looking for? They aren't quite, they're not in our best interest in regards to maybe some old primal senses that are operating in there in the background in our minds. And I think the more in our lives that we start to sort of rebalancing them senses and going back to the more primal aspects of ourselves, where we're not constantly always driving around a car. Instead of having a conversation on a laptop, you come in and sit beside the ocean. We're sort of going back to that place that we've always knew.
Yeah, I always think whenever I have a hard time like figuring something out or trying to understand something, I think ancestrally, where does it fit in?
Mm-hmm.
Like who I've evolved, who this biology has evolved to be. Like it's so radically, the way we're living now is so radically removed from how we've evolved. Say 200,000 years in this hominin, this Homo sapiens species. How those 200,000 years were played out to the last 4,000 years. It's so radically removed, and especially in the last 200 years, I'd say. But it's funny, I heard you mention before about the car kind of. We don't really understand what that's doing to us. So imagine if you're a postman, you're driving all day. A delivery postman, you're driving all day. You're driving for 8 hours a day. You're constantly, and there's been studies done that you're constantly in a fight or flight state. Because you need to be. Any second could be the bad second, and you could crash essentially. So you're always in that fight or flight state. So we don't really know what that's doing to us.
It's interesting because I know that you're very similar to me, because I've looked at your Instagram and stuff, and you're in this area of self-help and stuff. It's everybody is in the more that you come across interesting people like you and people all around us in this community, you do start realizing that people are looking at them fundamentals, of like what it really means to be like a sort of a true human. Because like, for example, as on this journey, as you start reassessing like every single area of your life, from health, financial, and then on top of that you start putting on spirituality, but without sort of the basics of can you move your body correctly, can you breathe correctly, can you just the basics anyway. And once you start,
it's like the pillars of health, isn't it?
Yeah,
I always look at the elements, the elements. So like if you want to look at health, look at earth, fire, water. Is my water clean? Am I drinking clean water?
Definitely.
Earth, what's growing out of the ground? What am I eating? What's those connections, those elements? Air, is the air around
definitely.
me? It's one of the reasons I live on the coast, because the air is so much different. But yeah, I think when you start to pick these ideas and you kind of figure out something's not right in your head, maybe you share some of your own personal experience on that. But for me, and I would assume someone like yourself, it started to kind of really. Well, I know you because I've listened to your podcast for many years, but you start to rewind all this stuff and think, okay, let's take it back to the beginning. Like, who am I, first of all? Where have I come from? We know a lot these days, so we look back historically, like what has our species experienced, etc. We can go back through history. How has the world got to this place? To know the past, to know the future. And then once you do that and you start to figure out, okay, well, this is how I've been brought up, and I've experienced 20 or 30 years of my life, and things haven't made sense that have actually, I've been told that this is the right way, or this is what I'm supposed to do. And then you start to kind of reevaluate that, and then it just blows your mind, because you then start to question everything. And it's like, okay, if those things were wrong, if the shoes on my feet that I was told were right for my feet, or this is the right way to breathe, you're supposed to do this certain, when you're running, or etc. If that was wrong, then what else is wrong? And then when you start to reevaluate everything, you do question everything, and it does open your mind up to kind of everything, and that's with the bad as well, and that's with the extreme. So I wondered if you could probably share some stuff how that's happened for you, and what have you really then built yourself back up again with, and how it's kind of how you've come to decipher some of that, because when you do start to question everything, you might filter in some of the things that might not actually be good for you to filter in,
I mean, I think it's always a constant learning curve, I mean, it's interesting because this a topic that at the moment for me is, for example, conversations that I go to, I'm talking about sometimes going to the depths of spirituality and things like that. And at the moment in society, there's a we're in the middle of a quote unquote pandemic.
What the fuck's going on in the world, Dan?
Yeah, it's going crazy. But
we can talk about that. I don't give a fuck about censorship.
But there's a at the minute there's a whole movement, and this is something that I'm going to be speaking about over the next couple of weeks and go into more depth. But there seems to be like a bit of disparity between the community of self-help and spirituality and conspiracies, because it's clear to say that there's a lot of nuances with what is going on in the world. I'm not going to go too far into it unless you want to go into it, but there's a lot of nuances in my opinion that's going on. There's a lot of conspiracies around it.
Mm-hmm.
But to get to that, there's a lot of disparity in between the community, because people are saying that if you're spiritual, you should think that this work's all coming from within you, and there's nothing. If you should just be focusing on yourself, you shouldn't be focusing on sort of external forces around you. But through my current journey at the moment, it seems like I'm someone who's doing the deep work. I'm doing the shadow work, but at the same time, I'm still coming to face with other stuff that's around us. So, just to answer your question from like try to go back to a more basic level instead of going too deep, that I think through our lives we're constantly moulding and trying to feel our way through what's right. I think we're coming to this world, and you start from day one, and this. You're sort of a blank canvas of consciousness, and then it gets to a point where the system tries to manipulate you and puts all these different filters on you and tries to mold you into this person. And you've got your parents who are adding traumas on you, and not of their fault, just because they've had traumas passed down to them. And I think it's hard to come into this world. It's hard to like sort of try and find your way through that. So for me as a person, I'm still in a position now where I think in my head on 5 years time I'll have it figured out. But then it's like I get to that point and I find something else, and Pandora's box is opened again, and I have this huge experience. So for me, I don't know if this answered your question, but I'm going on a tangent.
Oh, mate,
pull us back if not. But basically, it's I'm just somebody who's always getting to a certain point, thinking that I'll have it figured out, and then realise I don't, and then find something else.
I reckon your podcast is a good reference point. Do you ever go back and listen to, 5 years? I think you've been going for 5 years. 2015.
It's cringy. You'll say the same thing when you go back to yours as well.
I'm cringy a week ago.
Yeah, no, it is. It's good. It's beautiful to see the evolution.
Yeah, of yourself and what questions you're asking then, as opposed to what questions you're asking now, perhaps. But it's as a reference point, I think that's probably an indicator. Do you ever have moments of when you feel, oh God, I'm a lot further in the journey than kind of my brain thinks I am?
I think it's hard because as human beings we do sort of put ourselves down, don't we? I think we have this
inner critic.
Yeah, inner critic all the time. I've spoken about this a few times, but in my life, that inner critic for me is because the way I like to see it, sort of times, the voice inside the mind. It's hard to decipher between the two different voices. You have the monkey mind versus sort of the real intuition, and trying to create that sort of that space in the mind where you can. You can sort of push the monkey mind, not discard the monkey mind, because I think that has a purpose in society as well, but just create that little bit of space in your mind where you can actually listen to the true intuition. And for me, that's been one of the biggest things on my journey at the moment, because I've been going through having these sort of vast spiritual awakenings and stuff like that, and having the ability to decipher between the monkey mind versus the real intuition. And obviously on top of that as well, you've got the pull of society of like all these traumas and stuff like that that's trying to pull you into certain directions, and to try and find that space within yourself and decipher what is truth and what's not is a hard thing. And to go back to what you were saying before about how, I know because your podcast is I know it's not just about this, but it's quite health orientated as well, because that's the foundations. When I started my first podcast, it was the health was the foundations.
Yeah.
But the reason why that is because I've thought about this the other day, how the body itself is like an antenna for truth, because if you get your foundations right, if you're moving your body correctly, you're eating the correct food, you're doing you've got the right mindfulness practices, you've got the foundations right. From that position, you can decipher that voice in your mind a lot better. You can decipher between the monkey mind versus the intuition. You can decipher between maybe external forces that want to try and manipulate you to maybe eat this certain food or even take this pill or something like that, and it gives you the power back in yourself again. Yeah,
sure. I think the practice for me, like I don't really say need, but I don't really do my practice. So say yoga, say getting in cold water, going for like intentional meditation jogs, and I'm just concentrating on my breathing for the whole time, and it's like a meditation. These certain practices that bring me back to my center, I don't necessarily need them when I'm walking in the woods for 3 days. You know, it doesn't really feel like I need to.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on in the world now, almost to real our detriment for sure. Like, should we really know what's going on halfway around the world in some girl's bedroom? Probably not. Like, we don't need to know things like that. They are in our faces, you know, and being sold, and marketing and advertising really, really pulls at our. Russell Brand talks about that a lot. Pulls at our just our desires, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say that because, you know, I think it was Duncan Trussell who said this. Duncan Trussell was speaking on a podcast. I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast.
I've listened to him for a long time.
Really cool guy. He's so funny in it. But he talked about how in the Monday world right now, for example, you know, you've got the news and stuff, and he says it's like, you know, the meerkats. So for example, you know, when the meerkats are popping their heads up and down, looking all over the place, he said that people now are like meerkats because every 2 minutes it's like alert, the news, fear, look over here. But you're right, because, you know, in the past we would have been human beings. I know sometimes when I speak about these things, it's the world's a vastly different place now, but it's clear to see that we've lost touch with a lot of balance. You know, we need to go back to, as human beings, we need to go back to something that's more in touch with what we were in the past. There's a balance to be restored. Absolutely. But a lot of you know, it's clear to see that that the Monday world is shaped in a way to pull our attention. And like you said before, if we go back in the past, you wouldn't have been aware of what was going on across millions of miles away in the country. You know, you wouldn't have been worried about what sort of what's happening in California if someone's been shot on the head or something. You know, and that is playing in our, it's affecting our psychology.
We can't do anything about it as well. Like, you see so much just unjust in the world, and we hear about it. We can hear about it every day. You go down a rabbit hole with it, and you can just have it all in your face.
No, definitely.
If you want.
And I wonder as well, because us as human beings, we are very I can't say the word empathetic. Yeah. And you know, I wonder how that is affecting our psychology and the way that we shape our lives. Because, you know, when you watch something on TV, you do feel sorry. There's a human impulse, a natural human impulse that's telling you that's not quite right. Mm-hmm. And you know, for example, films are doing that now. Films are pulling on that psychology where it's all about killing people and trying to, like, you know, there's so much going on in the world. It's like we're overstimulated in so many different areas. Yeah.
And it wouldn't be surprising if someone out there even listening, and I feel like this when I see someone in fear, you know, that's not surprising, because look what you're consuming. Definitely. Look at the information that you're being kind of forced to read, to look at. So it's not surprising. We really have to have like a, What do you think? What's your solution when you? Do you step back? Do you go back to nature? Is that a good tool?
I'm still struggling through it myself. You know, all honesty, I'm still struggling through it. I'm still trying to find that equilibrium from every single area. But for me, what I've done is, you know, I don't think you can try and do this, but I don't know if it'll. I mean, some people might be able to do this. You can attack all areas, because I definitely did attack all areas. But I think if you focus on one area, for example, say in this immediate point in your life now, you know, you just need to get your money, you need to get your finances right to be able to put yourself in a position where you can be more of a free human. Or, for example, maybe it's just for you, it's just focusing on your body. Because for a long time, and for me, for at least 2 or 3 or 4 years, it was just focusing on my body. Yeah. And focusing on how I refuel my system, how I get this vessel, this human vessel that I'm sort of adopted for that I'm living in for a short time. Yeah. How do I get that moving functionally? And then my mind starts going, and then from there you start putting more and more stuff on top. So I think it's a case of picking your battles wisely at the time, what you want to focus on, and then from there you can start exploring whatever you want. Absolutely. Wherever it takes you. Yeah.
For me, it is getting that body in alignment, I guess, for lack of a better word. Because we are embodied, aren't we? We're embodied beings. So if you're not feeling well, if you're not physically putting yourself, again, back to the environment, in an environment that allows you to thrive, then your mind's not gonna go with it. So that's always been key for me. Hence the body-mind before the mind-body.
Oh, definitely.
I think it's important. But, you know, other people think differently. But that's what we're here to navigate it all. Just go to the edges to see where our centre is, you know.
No, I like that. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think that's, you know, I think I don't know how deep you want to go on this podcast.
Full on.
Oh, cool.
This is Dan Harrison takes over. Take over.
I was going to say that, you know, through my journey at the moment, the position that I'm at is, you know, I've sort of for the last few years, I've focused on sort of the body, and I've focused on more the physical elements and stuff like that. But eventually, it does take you to deeper levels within inside yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, a lot of people probably listen to this now. They know what psychedelics are. They probably experiment with psychedelics and things like that. But there is sort of a deeper dimension to this place. There's the body definitely leads you to that. Once you start working on yourself and you start, whatever element is of the human body that you choose to work on, and eventually it does lead to the bigger questions. Because I know through your podcast, you're probably gonna, you are gonna start. It's going to take you on a journey within yourself, and you're going to start looking at the bigger topics of life, and it'll take you on this beautiful journey. But there is, it's hard, but from my journey where I'm at now is, I'm constantly walking around looking at the world. Even this conversation now, I'm trying to recognize the signals that's coming from you, and
Mm-hmm.
the signals from Laura watching here, and everything like that, and sort of noticing how everything around me now is a mirror image of myself. How this conversation of things that you're saying are reflecting backwards and forwards between me. Even the way that Laura's mind, I can feel her mind.
I'm conscious that it hopes you can hear us.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean in terms of the mind.
Yeah.
Because everything's a reflection of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we, if we're the same thing of these rocks we're sitting on, how does that fit in?
Mm-hmm.
What am I perceiving? What
Yeah,
are
definitely.
just these eyes allowing me to perceive?
Mm-hmm.
And what's not there that I can tap into if I raise my own vibration, I suppose. But yeah, psychedelics are a huge tool as well, because more questions get answered and then more questions loom. I think what was I going to say? I think we definitely do live in a monophasic culture where everything's just determined by the five senses that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was listening to, and I've been aware of this, but it really put it into context. I was listening to Eastern Body, Western Mind. It's a book about, I think it's just the chakra system and how all that comes into it. And I know you've talked a large portion about the Kundalini Awakening. I don't know, maybe you can go into that just for my own benefit, really, because I've navigated that ground. And obviously, I teach yoga and stuff, but I think the Kundalini is I've heard different representation for different people, different understandings for different people. But yeah, maybe at its root level, it is the same. But the chakra system, in that it's not just the five elements. There's consciousness, there's light, and there's something else as well. I can't remember it. I think it might be just shadow or something. But in terms of the element of consciousness, yeah. In terms of your spiritual journey, though, how is the Kundalini Awakening awakened? Yeah, I think it was in January you talked about it a lot on your podcast. Because you have your Observing Your Thoughts episodes. Yeah. Well, what does it mean when I say that? The awakening of the Kundalini, how does it
So for me, when I first had that experience, I didn't know what it was. And I think...
Is it through meditation?
I'm not sure how it was invoked through my experience, because obviously I've experienced a lot with psychedelics. So psychedelics definitely... When I've done research into it, psychedelics can definitely invoke experiences like that. But for me, I think it was more that all through my journey, I have been sort of prodding at them questions anyway, so that, the more that because I think there's something that happens when you the act of just looking into topics like, say, going on a journey and looking at spirituality, reading books on consciousness and stuff like that, it's sort of, I think it pokes at something inside yourself, because really this experience that is happening with the Kundalini Awakening is from within you. It's not sort of an experience that's, you're not...
Have to attain anything.
Yeah, you don't have to attain anything. This is sort of, this information comes from within you. And just to add to that as well, I had a guy on the podcast called Anthony Peake, and he said this beautiful piece. I'll not go too much into it, but he goes on this, he talks about this narrative about this guy called, an anthropologist called Benny Shannon, who goes on this quest to find the secrets of the universe. And he says that, he's asking, he goes to all the best yogi teachers and stuff like that. Then eventually he gets to this point where he asks an ice cream salesman, what's the secrets of the universe? And the ice cream salesman turns around and says, you're not going to find the secrets in the bottom of the ocean. You're not going to find them on another planet, because eventually bad men will get to them, and unworthy men will find the secrets. And he says only when only when sort of the only place to hide the secrets of the universe would be to embed them within every person, and only when they're ready, that's when they can find the secrets. So I feel like that's what happens, on this journey. That's what for me, that's what the Kundalini Awakening is. Maybe it can be evoked by psychedelics and things like that, but I think it's more of you going on your own internal quest, and it'll activate points in your body. Because the way that this place works, the universe, it's not going to give you. I don't think it's going to give you a Kundalini Awakening unless you've really like touched on the inner dimensions within inside yourself. You've unlocked certain areas within inside yourself, and it'll give you that next stage in the evolution. Because that's what I feel like the Kundalini Awakening is to me. It's I mean, you can call it Kundalini Awakening, or you can just call it tuned into a higher state of awareness. Because for me, I know there's a lot of esoteric teachings talking about like labeling this is a Kundalini Awakening, this is what happens. And it's clear to see that there is like a serpent element to it, where the serpent comes through your body, and it's linked to esoteric teachings in the past in regards to the Kundalini Awakening. But I still feel like that the Kundalini Awakening for me is still just a small part of the human potential of what we can access through our own inner dimensions, if that makes sense. But to go back to the Kundalini Awakening, what happened for me is I was having these experiences which were at the time were very they were unknown. It was quite scary, to be honest, because it challenges the whole foundations of who you think you are, especially when it comes to the ego the ego construct that you have of yourself. Like, I'm down to have a podcast and stuff like that, or whatever relationships you've got, or your living environments and things like that, or how you've treated people in the past. It brings all this to the surface, and it hyper focuses and hyper analyzes every single element of your life that you need to work on and become a better person. And it's not just like, when it comes up, it's not just a case of this is it, this is that. It's like your lens of reality is sort of like a kaleidoscope. So or a telescope, whatever, and you're sort of zooming in to planets within inside yourself. But then planets are sort of things that you need to work on. So you can be hyper focused in one moment, and it can be saying, you've been a sort of a bad person here, and you need to sort this part of your life out. But then the ego comes back in again, and it takes you back out again, and goes, no, I'm actually alright, I'm a good person. So it's a constant, for me, the Kundalini Awakening, the best way to describe it is sort of like a kaleidoscope of your consciousness, where it's zooming in and zooming out to things that you need to work on, and things that you need to become a better person.
Interesting.
It's much bigger than that, but that's the basics I can sort of say.
How do you keep your ego in check? And is there moments where it kind of slips and you feel a bit more like your ego's in charge here?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, what I've been doing a lot lately is I've been understanding that. Because, there's people in the past, I remember when I first started the journey looking into the ego and things like that, and I always used to thought I think it's the guy Chris Halliday.
Ryan Holiday.
Ryan Holiday, yeah. He wrote the book called The Ego is the Enemy, I think. Yeah. But for me, I don't think that the ego is the enemy. I think
it can't be, can it? Really, because it's a part of you, and it surely, you can't get rid of it, really, can you?
Yeah,
because you need it to relate to things. I guess I am this, so this is this. It serves us, right?
So for me, I've learned. It's always a learning process. The ego always comes into place, and it overwhelms the system and takes you too much into one area which you shouldn't be in. But it's just a constant juggling act to try and tune it like I said before, what does the true self want versus the monkey mind, if you want to call it that, or whatever you want to call it, the ego, or the sort of bad wolf and the good wolf, whatever name you want to put on it. But I think it's about merging to find the true self, to create that I know this sounds sticky, the ultimate human, or the ultimate version of you. I think it's about merging the ego with the true self. That's what I feel. And I think when you get them two in a line, and I'm still on a journey to try and find that and do that, is that I think that's when you can be the optimal human, where you actually are doing things from a place of love instead of like a place of fear. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah, I think love. I think the love is the true self. It wants love. It needs love to live, I believe, especially in our early years. So it is a representation of love. So I think the true self is certainly love. I think as well, there is a especially with my life as well. I think there is
importance, just to go more practical levels so people can understand. Like I think the ego self is required in the physical, because we're living these physical lives for a reason. And I think it was like who was it again? It was like Alan Watts says. That's why these Buddhist teachers don't get anything ever done, because they've got no ego. That's why they don't do anything. That's why they just sit in the cave all day. Because I think there is an important element, to have an ego in the modern day world, especially in my opinion as well. What I feel what's coming now in the world, like some things that, not to go too conspiratorial, but I think there is some things that
you can go conspiratorial.
Well, I think that especially I think there's a big player that's playing out in the world now in terms of like the medical system. I think they don't. For example, you have people like me and you who are taking our powers back, and we're looking at alternative ways of living. Where, especially when it comes to health, we're taking all them different powers back that in the past or in the future, the way they want to take it is going to be try to be reliant upon a system that's outside of ourselves, and we're constantly
giving your power away.
Giving our power away.
Absolutely.
We're working towards taking as much power as we can back in our own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is it's a huge thing. You can't really debate. Like, people want to be fixed. They want to be told what to do. And you're giving your power away because you've got everything you need inside of you. But that is kind of also a metaphor for the modern day, almost. Definitely the Western world, how we've kind of, where we're at anyway. How much do you think the ego is playing a part in this, in what we've seen, the people who are in power, the people who are making the decisions? How much do you think the ego is playing a part in decision making, I guess?
I think it's a huge part, but I think the bigger element really in this is to go like really deep. I think there's a huge element of the shadow that's playing out within the leaders, within the world. And I mean, I don't know how deep to go, but
you can go as deep as you want, mate. So the shadow, I think, is probably the most important conversation that we can have in our modern day, because have the journey, the spiritual journey, is to understand your shadow. Everyone's got equal amount of light and equal amount of dark within them, and if you're not in check with your shadow, then you're not balanced. You can't understand where you're kind of falling out of sync, I guess, falling out of balance. And if your shadow's taking over and ruling the day, then it's happening. We're not in relationship with our shadow. And why do you think that is, first of all? Why do you think the shadow is in control of a lot of people, say, or just playing out?
I think just because people haven't really faced it, that's the reason why. Because I think the shadow in our lives is working through us unconsciously at all moments. Even in our dreams, it's coming up through our dreams and stuff. And we haven't been given the context as a young person in this world to understand how to navigate that plane. It's this. When we come into this world, you grow up in the world and you think it's just a physical existence. But there's, ancient cultures in the past always understood and knew this importance that this place is not just a physical emergence. It's a blend of the two. It's a metaphysical and a physical place that we're in. And if we haven't got the skills, the shadow is gonna be coming through in your daily life. It's gonna bleed into relationships and how you treat people. It's gonna interact how you organize your businesses, and do you treat people with respect? Do you just treat them as a sort of an employee instead of actually a human being? So this is bleeding out. The shadow is bleeding out in all areas of our lives. But to go a little bit deeper, to go back before you were saying before, like to actually go really deep, I feel like, because through the Kundalini Awakening, what I've learned over the last few years is that this whole place that we're in is a cleansing of the soul. So, for example, we're discovering different elements of ourselves of where the shadow is leaking out and it's controlling certain lives, and we're trying to like sort of find that equilibrium again and create the balance of become a better person. How do you treat this person? But I feel like there's also like Graham Hancock talks about this, how he says that eventually when our life is done in this sort of this small period that you are a human, you incarnated in a human form, that you will sort of be judged on everything that you've done in your life. You'll be judged on how you treat people. And I think that there is to go deep, I think there is people in this world who has done a lot of bad, and they know they've done a lot of bad. And I think if you do go down the trail where you do face your shadow, and I know how I've faced my shadow and many different elements, and I thought I was a really good person, and I've faced a lot of elements that go so deep that you get a arse kicking. And I think that some people who are in control, they are going to get an arse kicking, and that's what they're scared to face. So that's why they're just doing anything in the power now to try and take this to a week completely away in the other direction to this.
Interesting. Let's take it physical. To remove everything that we can't see, touch and feel, because I want to relate that to morality and where that comes in, and where you think our shadow, because some people would just call that morality and what we deem what is moral and what is immoral, and that's almost man-made, would you say? Or do you say there's something more at play?
Could you describe that a bit more?
So I guess, it was an awful question. So morality, I guess, a lot of people would say, what's moral? There's no good or bad. Thinking makes it so. It's our own. It's our own creation, I guess. We deem what's good and bad, through society, through probably religions played a big part in that, in past times, in creating like what is good and what is bad. Obviously, you can take it to, we can all kind of know what is good and what is, but it kind of interlaps over, I guess. Not making the question any easier, but what would you say? Where does morality come in, and where does what you were saying before about the kind of shadow? Where does that kind of overlap? I guess.
I think I know what you're trying to say, but for me in my life, I think sometimes these terms can overcomplicate things. I think if you just more say it as what does the true self want versus maybe what the world's trying to dictate to us wants. Because I think if you just focus on what you truly want and you connect to them deeper levels within inside yourself of you want to become a better person, that the patterns that are the forces out there that are trying to dictate us in other ways, they just fall off. They no longer serve that old self. So I think you can.
I guess some people are trying to accumulate things, wealth, success, other people's validation, to feed their own self, and they think that's a good thing. They think that I'll take to feed my own thing, because then I can provide for my family, and that's all that matters. But morally, taking from other people and attacking life in that way is probably morally not right. No,
because I think fundamentally, everyone in life we all want the same things. You learn that very fast if you travel around the world and you meet certain types of people. You discover that they're just like me. They just want to have a house, they want to have a family, they want to make sure they've got food on the table. And I think what's sticky, the world that we're in now, is that we get to this point where as a human being we get them things, and if you're somebody who if you're not easy to serve, and you want a bit more than that, that's, in my opinion, that's when the world starts getting a bit tricky, because to get to them things, you've got to sort of step on other people to get to them things. And I just feel like the more you make yourself easy to serve in your life, the more that you're going to connect to the true essence of what it is to be a human, basically.
I also want to mention, have you heard of the concept the boogeyman?
Yeah.
Have you, when in certain tribes, when they let the shadow play out in someone, yeah? I've talked on my podcast before, so I don't need to go into it too much. But yeah, the concept of the boogeyman.
I thought you were going to say the boogeyman in terms of the sort of the UK-based boogeyman who.
Who's this guy?
If you've been too naughty at night, he comes and gets you.
Oh no! So the boogeyman actually originally, obviously, I didn't know this till about a month ago, and my mate told me. That in some tribes, I don't know if it still happens, but certainly in the past, as a way to represent the shadow, they let one person, and it's a real honour to get this kind of almost prize to, within a certain period of time, maybe it's a year, play out all the darkness and all the shadows. You can do what you want, essentially. All these kind of things that are coming up, then just let it play out. If you want to hurt someone, hurt them. If you want to, sleep with someone, whatever. And they let it play out, and in the end of the year, whole period of time, then they sacrifice this person. in a way to kind of capture all darkness as a practice, I guess. And that's happened in the past. It's mad, really, when you think about it. But it also makes a lot of sense in that they're in relation with the shadow. They're aware of it. They're aware of these kind of pulls in certain ways, and the accumulation one can get from taking too much of something, doing too much of this, too much of that. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept to take it back to kind of like the shadow side.
I think there's an argument as well that I've heard many times by shamans and stuff like that that there's an aspect where you should be honouring it. Like you said, you should honour the shadow within inside yourself. But I don't know, because it's a concept that I'm still playing with in my head now. Should you honour that shadow aspect of yourself? Because I feel like I know how hard it is. I know how deep the shadow goes within the human consciousness. I know how much it's overruling so many different actions in our lives. The way we have relationships with people, the way that we talk to people, the way that we do everything in our lives. It is bleeding through so much. And I don't know if we should. I don't know if we should honour that shadow aspect within ourselves. I don't know. Not until maybe we can fully understand what it is. Because and then there's the other side of myself where I've heard shamans, for example, they'll have like an ayahuasca experience, and they'll be doing all this deep profound work where they're working on people and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden there was an example, a guy who had on the podcast who told the story about how the shaman turned around and said they were doing all this deep work, and then everyone was so like you could cut the tension with a knife. It was so like the work was so deep. And then he just turns around and he says, right, let's crack open the beers and let's like get out the whores, you know what I mean? So,
what?
Yeah. So basically, he was trying to. So I think with the shadow, there's an element of where you can honour the shadow, but I think don't let it. If you do choose to sort of honour your shadow, I think you have to try and maybe tap into more the play aspect of things, like use the shadow as an aspect of not take life so seriously. And if you're doing an ayahuasca ceremony, just remember that this place is a game. It's don't take, like Alan Watts always says, that man and woman take seriously what the gods made for fun. There is a play element to this whole thing that we do need to not take seriously, but at the same time trying to find that balance for me at the moment is one that I'm still trying to navigate. So for me to say that yes, we should honour our shadow, I'm not too sure, because I'm still working on it myself. I'm trying to find that balance within my life. Should we go too far one way or not? I think it's just a constant motion that it's moving all the time.
And I think the byproduct of that is like seriousness, and how serious you take things. Because I often, since I've been kind of delving deeper, often get on this serious kind of head, especially when I care about it so much and other people don't seem to. And then I start to become so serious about it, and I'm like, good God, who am I? Like, the best way to give someone some information is probably to make them laugh, to feel comfortable.
No, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going so serious at it.
That's why I think comedy in the world and humour is so powerful. I think that is a true.
It's the last standing public mode of public speaking there is, almost. And you can say what you want.
In my life as well, I've really had to try and. I've had to cultivate that, because I was going too far. When I was looking at all these deep esoteric topics, it can get very serious. In the spirituality community, it can be like, this is so serious, this. But the more you sort of, just have a laugh in certain moments, you realise that, like, because when you start laughing more, you can start. When you start laughing more at the deeper concept, you can start laughing more at the sort of the challenging things in life. So, for example, if you if you're in a stressful situation in your life, you can try and use the understanding that you have, that this is not to take it so seriously. That it can help you navigate that plane of where in the past you would have been, because when bad things happen in your life, they can take you into a sort of dark place inside yourself, and you start beating yourself up. But if you realise that it's just a passing thing, it's just something, it's just a happening that's happening in the universe. And try and laugh at these moments, and it can make them moments a lot easier to digest with inside yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to do that, because at the end of the day, no one knows what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
You just don't know.
100%.
You can't pretend to know. The more I know, the less I know, right?
Oh, definitely.
So you can't take it seriously because you just don't really know. Even as you were saying that, I was like, wow, it is almost so. We do need to take it seriously. We do, because it's so important that the world goes in a better direction. We would like this to happen. Like, it would be better if the world went in this direction. This didn't happen, so we've got to fight till the death to like do it. And you're like, well, actually, I don't really know the whole existence and why it's here. So let's just not take it so seriously.
Yeah, definitely.
Ruin my life, my finite amount of time
It's
here.
interesting because there is a balance to that, because, you know, we're sitting here now doing a conversation that we know ultimately is going to help people. So there is an element of within me and you now
Yeah, for
that
sure.
is driving us.
I think this is
in that
helping them
sense.
more than anything, saying no, don't take it seriously.
Yeah, definitely. But it's just like a constant. Everything in life's a a constant polarity, you know.
It is, yeah. We live in a dualism.
And that goes for as well. For example, you can take any topic when, you know what it's like. You take just take for example, you know, a certain topic where you're dogmatic about that certain topic, whether it's whatever that topic, whether it's health, you know, you're dogmatic how you train your body, you're dogmatic how human beings should be eating this type of food. When you start putting yourself too much in the boxes, it leaves you no like removability to be able to you know, change who you are as a person. You know, because for example, in the past I used to train a certain one way, in like my body, exercise my body in a certain way, and I left no movability to add new things to my toolbox. And that you can use, for example, you know, the topic of veganism for that, stuff like that. If you say that, no, I'll never ever eat meat again, then it doesn't give you any room to expand your horizons in your mind to become a different person.
Yeah.
So the more that you put yourself, you know, because for example, the Monday world's trying to put us in these boxes, and then you come into spirituality and self-help and stuff like that, and then you end up creating yourself another box anyway, and you're stuck in another box.
Yeah. Try not to define myself too easily.
Definitely.
I think people do define themselves, and you don't, like me and my partner, we always say, like, we don't know the person I met. These are so different. Like, if I met that person right now, we wouldn't have a connection. Like,
yeah, definitely.
We're radically different, and in 5 years we're going to be different. So it's it's forever changing, constantly changing. So what do you say when people ask you what you do? Because I love that question. At a barbecue, and you're like, so what do you do? And I'm like,
For fun.
get in the sea every day.
I was actually speaking about this the other day, and I said, because when people do, there's a sort of a nuance in society to justify your means by like sort of what you do for money, you know, because that's what that question's really about. It's like what you do for money.
Then I can take you seriously.
Yeah, then I can take you seriously, exactly. Then I can judge you, you know, on what type of person you are and how I'm going to talk to you and things like that. But you know, for example, I've had a lot of people say that to me, and I just turn around and say, what for fun? Because, you know, we don't really go around and ask people what you do for fun.
Yeah, what
like,
makes you laugh?
Or are you happy?
Yeah.
So it is one of them questions where, and I know it's coming from a place of, that question for a lot of people is just coming from a place of that's what you do, you know, you're getting these patterns.
Yeah,
When you meet somebody, you say, what do you do? But we don't really question them patterns, and if them patterns are left unchecked, it can lead to other stuff in our lives.
Yeah, it takes courage as well to just break the pattern and not start to ask people, hey, how you doing? What makes you laugh? Like, are you happy in your life? What's going on? And yeah, it takes courage, because you don't want to be the first person on the dance floor, do you?
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. But for me, to answer that question seriously, I would just say that I don't know what I do. You know, I don't know what anyone's doing. You know, we're all doing something, but I don't know what we're doing. That's all I would say to that.
Yeah, amazing. What does the future hold, Dan? I really want to get your insight into the future. Where do you see us going? Because I was listening to Mickey Willis the other day talk about the future and the future of our society, just in England maybe. Where do you see England in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years?
That's a massive question, that what's going to happen.
It is. Perhaps in terms of,
I could take that many different angles.
I know. It's an unfair question. But I suppose I wanted that response. Really.
I could try and break it down if you want, a few different angles. I'm not scared to attack anything, so I can talk about anything.
Well, we're going in the sea after this, so take your time.
Jesus Christ. This is going to be a very long answer then. Trying to think how to do this. Well, I think from more of a physical sense, I think that there's a lot of positivity. There's definitely a lot of positivity. People like ourselves who are looking at alternative solutions to become, you know, a more aligned human in terms of maybe more people now are starting to look into alternative types of living that's a more sustainable. People are looking into growing their own foods and stuff like that, and that's definitely something that I've been looking into in the future.
Yeah, they're not subscribing to
definitely
to what have made, I'm going to say it, largely our parents unfulfilled.
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. But then on the other side of things, there seems to be a pull as well from old systems that are dying in the world, are trying to hold on, and they're trying to create different systems to make more people reliant. For example, you know, the virus that's going on in the world now. I definitely think that there's going to be a reaction from that, from a lot of people and people who are in power, to try and undo the work that we've been doing for the last 5-6 years. You know, people in this community now have been taking the power back for a long time. It seems to be that a switch at the moment is being put on hold to try and sort of unravel sort of the work that we've done so far to get to the position that we're in. I'm choking, I need a drink.
Unravel the word.
No, we have some water. I might drink some of that sea water.
I've got some water over there.
Have you?
It's just in a flask. It might be in my bag.
But in terms of like where the world could go, you know, I think there's multiple things. You know, I've read books in the past, like you know, about artificial intelligence and technology and stuff like that. And it's clear to see that the world is
the enmeshment of humans and tech. I think it feels like it's already here. You know, it's already here to some degree. I've been watching an amazing Netflix, and I rarely watch series. You know, I'm not that kind of guy. For now, I feel like I've got a lot I want to like pay attention to. So, but someone recommended me, and you know, when they look you in the eye and you go, "You got to watch this. This is insane. This is really good." It's a German Netflix documentary, not documentary. It's a series called Dark. Have you heard about it?
I think I have. I think so.
Yeah, they like ad-libbed it into English, which makes it more interesting. But yeah, it's about 3 dimensions and black holes. So there's a black hole in this town called Willow or something like that, next to a big power station. I've just watched the first season. It's worth a watch, but only if you've got the time, because it will eat it up. I always think I'm just going to watch series when I'm ill or, you know, old.
Yeah.
Because it just consumes your time. So yeah, but it's fascinating. Can't remember why I started talking about it, but yeah. I suppose it's about the future as well. And it's in 33-year cycles. So in 33 years, the universe essentially, that's kind of a cycle. You know, it's all back to, not every year the planets don't align, but every 33 years. So a year's not a year. But it's the past, present, and future in this wormhole, and you can go to each one of them. 33 years, 1956, 1986, 1953, 1986, and 2019. But it's fascinating.
But
definitely
to add as well, just before I need that, I was choking there. I needed a drink.
Yeah. What were you saying?
I do think as well, to go a bit deeper. You know, we spoke a bit about the Kundalini Awakening and stuff. And I was talking in the middle of the podcast how there is sort of a, you know, there's an innate intuition that's flowing through all of us now. You know, through the whole human experience. In ancient cultures in the past, understood that there was these bigger cycles. You know, that bigger cycles of consciousness that are affecting humanity at all times. Just like you have seasons in life, like you have the 4 seasons, there's also seasons that are permeating the whole of the universe and that are affecting the way that you live your life, the way that you treat people and stuff like that. Because to think that consciousness is just sort of a phenomenon that's working just in my body and that's it, maybe, I mean, it might be the case, I'm open to that as well, but it might not be. It might be something, a case where, you know, the consciousness that's in me is also affects you, and how you live your life affects me, and it has a whole sort of a cycle, a knock-on effect. And it seems to be that there is cycles that are affecting humanity. You know, it's clear to see. You look at the work of Graham Hancock and people like this. They talk about these vast cycles of time that do affect the way that people live their lives. And the evidence is clearly there to see if you look back at the Egyptian cultures and you look back at all the different periods in time all the way to where we are now. There seems to be that humanity gets to this point where they awaken their senses, then they forget again, and then they go through this period of remembering, and we're getting to this point now where technology's come along and we're remembering who we are. But there seems to be that there's a bit of a sort of a dance to get to that point, where so at the minute now, like we said before, there's a lot of people who are waking up, but then there's a lot of people who are still stuck in these old paradigms. And it seems to be there's this sort of a flux at the moment where humanity is at this sort of this forking point where we do get a choice in the future, where we can make good decisions. We can start creating a deeper connection to the land. You can start taking back your power in certain areas of your life. But then at the same time, there's, like I said before, there's external forces who, in my opinion, are trying to pull us away from that, and take us back to maybe a more futuristic system that's reliant upon, sort of what's the word, like a technocrat, like a technology system that tells you how to eat your food and tells you what pills.
Autonomous.
Autonomous system. So at the minute, there seems to be like there's a huge pull where you're going to get so many people in the future who are going to be living on off-grid and stuff like that. Maybe people who are just more sort of dependent upon the systems within inside themselves instead of outside themselves. Yeah. And I think for me at the moment, there's a big dance. It seems to be I know in your own personal life, there's things that I've seen on your Instagram. You're fighting for that in your personal life. I'm fighting for it in mine. And I think in the future, you might see in the future where we'll have a splitting of that. You might have groups of people who are more self-sustainable, and you might have people who are living in sort of this artificial world that's sort of pulling your senses all over the place. I don't know what's the right thing and what's not, because like you said, life's just happening as it is, isn't it? So who knows what's right?
It really is.
But that's what I'm saying. We've got to get back to what we said in the podcast. You've got to try and tune into what's right for you, not what someone else is trying to dictate to you. What do you feel inside of you? Yeah. How do you want to live your life?
I think feeling is massive. It's something I've been trying to tune into a lot. Like, what do I feel? Because I often say, and again, it's a habit. What do I think? Oh, what do you think, Chris? Like, in this situation, what do you think? Well, what do I feel? And I ask people now, like, what do you feel? Do you feel this is right? Like, this, even think something is wearing a mask. Do you feel that's right? Do you feel okay with that? What the information, what that's out there. How does that make you feel when you watch Boris? How does he make you feel?
Yeah, definitely.
And if you it's hard for people because they're going against what they feel, and I think there again just provokes the disconnect between themselves. They detach from what they feel, and then it leaves them feeling not good.
No, definitely, because
so there's a big difference.
There's a huge disconnect. That's why between people and the self. That's why people are reliant upon someone else to give you information instead of you feeling. Instead of you just connecting to that deeper essence within inside yourself. You don't. When you do connect to that true essence within you, you don't require Boris Johnson or any other president around the world to tell you what to do. You feel it from within you, because I think there's this notion in society that I think Bruce Parry talked about this a while ago when I spoke to Bruce Parry, but he said that there's this notion in society that if human beings don't have external forces that control them in their lives, they'll run around killing people and being crazy.
That's the narrative, isn't it, of what people think who are in power?
Yeah, definitely.
Which is not the case.
Yeah, it's not. I think if
Charles Eisenstein talked about that as well.
Yeah, definitely did. And I think that people inherently do want to do good, and people will. We do have self-organising systems within inside of ourselves that are navigating our realities at all times. This whole reality is not so fixed. This whole place is built on beliefs. The money's a belief system.
It's a shared idea.
Yeah, it's a shared idea, and I think human beings have this point in time that we're on this planet now is such a small period in time, and we think that we're at this sort of pivotal point. We have these mobile phones, we have all these technology. I know we're using technology now,
probably
which is great.
They've always felt that way, probably.
Yeah, of course. And
we're always on the brink of something. We're always like at the moment where it all goes wrong, or we just
I think at times we like to try and sort of navigate our reality by the means that we can see where we're at in our lives now, because we can only we think we're at the best period in our time now because this is the way it is, but we don't create that perspective in our lives to take a step back and actually analyse everything from a bigger picture like something that I do in my life, I try to do a lot of times, because things around you they can sweep you away. You can think like, I've got this amount of money, or I've got the perfect life. But if you try and create like an astronaut perspective in your mind, where you imagine if you were looking at the planet, whether you believe it's flat or round, whatever, but you just take yourself away and look at the planet, and you do that in your own life and look at how things are playing out, you can start thinking like, well, maybe I need to do this here, I might need to do that here, I might need to do that there, and that's what I feel anyway.
Yeah. You're terrorising me because you're shivering.
I am cold. I'm cold.
Well, we can wrap it up there, mate. It's good. Maybe one final question. What are you most excited about right now? I know the answer, I think.
Maybe give you a bit of a different answer.
Go for it.
I'm excited how many people around the world are actually waking up, because I notice this in my own daily interactions with my family members and stuff like that. Because my period in my life now, where I've had to sort of went through a period where I've been reassessing a lot of stuff in my life, and I've had to go back and live back at home with my mother, for people who don't call them mum in different parts of the world. And even just the interactions with my family members in the past, who wouldn't be quite looking into health, they wouldn't be looking into spirituality or alternative topics, are now slowly, there's a huge emergence within people now that's bubbling. People are doing the work. People are looking into alternative topics. People are questioning the narrative that people are telling us and stuff like that. You start a podcast, other people are starting a podcast. People are just having intelligent conversations. Like you said, you're going out, I've seen you on your Instagram, you're riding down on your bike, jumping in the ocean. To me, that's positive. People are not sticking to the norm. They're trying different alternative stuff. They're being inspired by everyone around us. So I think that's why I'm going to say this. That's what I'm most excited about, is that people are connecting back to that true spirit, that's in us all.
Yeah, and just to jump on that, the fact that people like ourselves and many of my friends go back to their families and honestly talk about the things they're experiencing, and it does spark something inside, because it's inherent in us all.
Yeah, definitely.
That connection to truth, I guess, in a little bit more simpler term. But yeah, all good, mate. Sweet.
Really
Thanks
cool.
very much.
Really cool. Thank you so much for inviting us on. Really cool.
Absolute
really
pleasure,
cool.
mate.
Thanks.
Cheers.
We'll have to do that again in the warm.